After the accident that claimed her parents, 16-year-old Aisha moved into her cousin Daniel's house. He was only a few years older but already had a stable job and a calm, protective presence that made her feel safe. He became her ward, the one who tucked her in when nightmares came, who promised her that the pain would fade with time. To everyone else, Daniel was a hero for taking her in. To Aisha, he was family reborn. But sometimes, in the late hours when the rain fell, she'd see something flicker in his eyes, a darkness she couldn't name. Still, she brushed it off, convincing herself that love could never hide danger. Aisha often woke from dreams that left her breathless, flashes of headlights, a scream, and her mother calling her name. Daniel always appeared at her door moments later, his tone steady, assuring her it was just grief. He said the mind plays tricks when it's healing. She believed him. After all, he'd saved her, hadn't he? Yet as she looked around the house, she sometimes found odd reminders of her parents, a photograph she never remembered taking, or her father's watch buried in Daniel's drawer. Each time she asked, Daniel had an answer ready. Still, unease lingered like a shadow, growing as quietly as her memories began to stir. The envelope came on a quiet afternoon, her acceptance letter to Ridgeview University. Aisha screamed with joy, hugging Daniel tightly. "You did it," he said, his smile a little too fixed, his grip a little too firm. She thought it was pride. That night, she danced alone in her room, imagining her new life, independence, friends, freedom. But when she told Daniel she'd be staying on campus, his face shifted. "You don't need to rush away," he said softly. "There's safety here." His tone wasn't angry, but possessive. Aisha laughed it off, unaware that her newfound freedom threatened something deeper, something Daniel was desperate to keep buried. While packing her things, Aisha found a small brass key inside an old box of her mother's jewelry. It didn't fit anything in her room or Daniel's house. Curious, she slipped it into her pocket. When Daniel saw her holding it, his expression froze. "That's just junk," he said, snatching it quickly. "Probably from your father's toolbox." His voice trembled for the first time. That night, Aisha couldn't sleep. Her instinct screamed that the key meant something, something Daniel didn't want her to find. She started to remember faint images of a wooden chest, her mother crying, and Daniel's voice promising everything would be okay. But why? One night, Aisha overheard Daniel on the phone. "She's remembering," he said quietly. "No, I'll handle it." His words chilled her to the bone. Who was he talking to? Why did he sound afraid? When she entered the living room, he quickly hung up and smiled. "Just work stuff," he explained. But his eyes told another story, sharp, calculating. Aisha excused herself, locking her door for the first time. Sleep didn't come easily that night. The house felt smaller, the air heavier. Her memories were no longer silent, they were knocking. The next morning, Aisha noticed the guest room door was locked. It had always been open before. When Daniel left for work, curiosity pulled her closer. She tried different keys, none fit. Then she remembered the brass key, which Daniel had taken. But she had made a copy before returning it. With trembling hands, she tried it. The door creaked open to reveal a room frozen in time, her parents' belongings, her mother's perfume, even their wedding photo. She stepped inside, her eyes flooding with tears. Why had Daniel hidden this? On the desk sat a sealed envelope addressed to her father, in Daniel's handwriting. The letter inside was short but haunting. "I can't live under their judgment anymore. They'll ruin everything if they tell her. I'll make sure they don't." Aisha's blood ran cold. The letter wasn't signed, but the penmanship was Daniel's. Her mind spun, her parents. What could they have known? As the truth began to shimmer beneath her grief, footsteps echoed down the hall. Daniel had come home early. In a panic, she slid the letter into her pocket and shut the door, pretending to be in her room. When he knocked softly, she forced her voice to stay steady. "Just studying," she said. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. That night, the dreams returned, only this time, clearer. She saw her parents arguing with Daniel in the rain. Her father's voice was angry, her mother crying, Daniel shouting something about keeping the secret. Then, the blinding light of a car. A crash. Silence. She woke up screaming. The next morning, Daniel was sitting beside her bed, holding a cup of tea. "You've been through enough," he whispered. But when she met his eyes, she saw something there that made her chest tighten: guilt. At school, Aisha met Lonnie, a journalism student who noticed her distracted mood. When Aisha mentioned her dreams and confusion, Lonnie's curiosity lit up. "Dreams are sometimes memories trying to surface," she said. Lonnie offered to help Aisha dig into her past. Together, they visited the town records office, hoping to find details about her parents' accident. But the police file was sealed, by request of guardian, the clerk said. Guardian, Daniel Osei. Aisha's world tilted. He hadn't just hidden her parents' belongings, he'd hidden their truth. Searching her mother's old purse, Aisha found a small USB drive labeled 4A. She plugged it into her laptop and opened a folder filled with recordings. Her mother's voice echoed through the speakers, trembling, "If anything happens to us, don't trust Daniel. He isn't who you think he is." Aisha froze. The recording continued with muffled shouting in the background. "He made a deal with the company that destroyed your father's work. He'll silence us." The clip ended abruptly. Aisha stared at the screen, tears rolling down. Her heart shattered, her savior was her parents' destroyer. When Daniel returned home that evening, Aisha couldn't hide the storm in her eyes. "What really happened the night my parents died?" she demanded. His body stiffened, then relaxed into a practiced smile. "You're confused, Aisha. You're letting grief twist your mind." But her trembling hands held the USB drive. "I heard everything," she said. His expression darkened instantly. "You shouldn't have found that." He stepped closer, his voice soft but threatening. Fear clawed at her throat. She realized then that she was no longer safe. That night, she packed a small bag, hiding her documents and the USB deep inside. When Daniel finally went to bed, she slipped quietly out into the cold night air, into uncertainty, but also freedom. Aisha spent the night at a 24-hour cafe, her mind spinning. She couldn't go to the police yet, not without proof that Daniel was responsible. Lonnie found her the next morning, pale and exhausted. Together, they planned their next move. Lonnie suggested going to her older brother, a law student who could help decode the files on the USB. "We'll find the truth," she promised. For the first time, Aisha felt she wasn't alone. Yet as she looked out the cafe window, she spotted Daniel's car driving slowly past. He was looking for her. Her heart pounded. The hunt had begun. Lonnie's brother turned, examined the contents of the USB. Most of the files were encrypted, but a few were open, documents revealing financial transfers from her father's company to Daniel's bank account. "He sold your father's research," Ton said grimly. "Someone paid him to leak it." Aisha felt sick. The betrayal was deeper than she'd imagined. Her parents had discovered it and tried to confront him. "That's why they died. We need to prove he planned it," Lonnie said. But Daniel was powerful now connected. Aisha realized she'd be fighting not just a man, but the darkness he'd built around himself. 2 days later, the police arrived at the cafe with a warrant. Daniel had reported Aisha missing and mentally unstable. He said, "You've been hallucinating," one officer explained gently. Panic rose inside her. "He's lying," she cried. Lonnie stepped forward, defending her, but the officers warned they had to take her home if Daniel was her guardian. Thinking fast, Ton showed them her college admission letter. "She's an adult," he insisted. After a tense silence, the officers left. But the message was clear: Daniel knew where she was, and he was tightening his net. Back in Lonnie's dorm, Aisha listened to the recordings again, hoping for clues. Then she noticed faint sounds in the background: rain, car engines, and her mother whispering, "Daniel, don't do this, please." Ton enhanced the audio, revealing Daniel's voice responding coldly, "You've left me no choice." Aisha covered her mouth, tears flooding her eyes. It was enough to prove motive, but not murder. Still, it was something. Lonnie placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We'll expose him. He can't bury this forever." That night, Aisha dreamt again, only this time, she saw everything clearly. Her parents driving through the storm, Daniel's car following behind. She remembered the crash and Daniel pulling her from the wreckage. But what she hadn't remembered before was his whisper as he carried her out, "You'll thank me one day." She woke up screaming, trembling uncontrollably. The truth was unbearable. Daniel hadn't just been present, he had orchestrated it. He saved her only to control her. The man she called family had murdered her world. Daniel arrived on campus unannounced, charming the security guards with his usual smile. "Just here to check on my cousin," he said. When Aisha saw him standing at the gate, her body froze. Lonnie pulled her behind the library shelves. "He can't find you," she whispered. But Daniel's voice carried across the hall, calm and deliberate. "Aisha, come home. You're confused. I can help." His words made her skin crawl. As she stayed hidden, she realized something chilling: his calmness wasn't love, it was ownership. And he wasn't leaving until he reclaimed it. Ton traced Daniel's financial records and found one address repeatedly linked: a storage facility on the city's edge. That evening, the trio drove there quietly. The guard let them in, thinking they were family. Inside, Aisha found a safe with the same pattern carved into its side as her brass key. Her heart raced as she turned the key. Inside were documents, photographs of the crash site, and a signed insurance contract naming Daniel as the sole beneficiary. The signature was forged in her father's handwriting. Aisha gasped. "He planned everything," she whispered. Every lie now had proof. Ton advised Aisha to go public carefully. He contacted a local journalist known for exposing corruption. They met in secret, showing her the evidence. The journalist, Miriam, agreed to investigate. "If this is true," she said, "it's bigger than you think. He's tied to the corporation that stole your father's patent." Aisha's stomach knotted. Daniel wasn't just greedy, he was part of something far-reaching. Still, exposing him meant war. "Do it," Aisha said quietly. "The truth is all I have left." 2 nights later, Miriam's office was broken into. Files were stolen, and her car was vandalized. "He knows," she told Aisha over the phone. Fear crept back into Aisha's chest. Daniel had eyes everywhere. Lonnie insisted they move to a safer location. They hid in an old hostel outside town, using burner phones and new SIM cards. But Aisha couldn't sleep. Every shadow looked like Daniel. Every sound reminded her of the night of the crash. Her body lived in fear, but her heart pulsed with determination. She wouldn't let him win. Ton created a decoy plan. He leaked partial evidence online using a fake account, making it seem like Aisha was preparing a live confession. Within hours, Daniel called her phone. "You're making a mistake," he said, voice trembling with rage. "I protected you. Everything I did was for you." Aisha felt tears burn in her eyes. "You destroyed everything I loved," she replied. There was silence, then his chilling whisper, "Then I'll destroy what you have left." The line went dead. Aisha realized this wasn't over. Daniel was coming for her. That night, flames erupted outside the hostel. Someone had set fire to the garbage bins, and the heat spread fast. Lonnie screamed for help as smoke filled the hallway. They barely escaped through a window, coughing and gasping. Aisha watched the fire devour the building. There was no doubt who had done it. Her body shook, but inside her burned a different fire, rage. Daniel wanted to erase her, just as he'd erased her parents. Not this time. With Miriam's help, they planned a live broadcast, a documentary-style revelation that couldn't be stopped once it aired. Aisha recorded her story in a small studio, speaking calmly as she laid out every detail: the crash, the USB, the documents, and the betrayal. "My name is Aisha Ose," she said, voice breaking, "and the man who raised me killed my parents." It was the hardest sentence she'd ever spoken. Miriam promised to air it anonymously until they could guarantee her safety. The countdown began. Before the broadcast went live, Aisha vanished. Lonnie found her bag open and the door forced. Her phone lay shattered on the ground. Panic spread. Tom tried calling the police, but no one took the case seriously. Miriam used her connections to trace a CCTV feed. A black SUV had taken Aisha from the hostel gate. Daniel had made his move. The race to save her began. Aisha woke in a dimly lit warehouse. Her wrists were tied, and Daniel stood nearby, calm as ever. "I never wanted it to end like this," he said softly. "They forced my hand. Your parents were going to ruin us." His words echoed like poison. "Us," she whispered. "You ruined me." He knelt beside her, touching her face gently. "I gave you everything. Why couldn't you just forget?" She spat at him, trembling. "Because the truth remembers." His eyes turned cold. "Then maybe the truth dies with you." As Daniel stepped outside to take a call, Aisha noticed a shard of glass on the floor. Her hands shook as she cut through the ropes, slicing her skin but freeing herself. She crept toward the exit, every sound amplified by terror. A guard spotted her and shouted, but she ran, through the darkness, through pain, through fear. Outside, headlights blinded her. It was Lonnie's car. "Get in!" Lonnie screamed. Aisha dove inside, sobbing with relief. They sped away into the night, Daniel's enraged roar echoing behind them. Miriam wasted no time. The documentary aired that same night, spreading like wildfire across social media. Hashtags with Aisha's name trended globally. People demanded answers. The police reopened the case. Aisha watched from a safe house, shaking as Daniel's smiling face appeared on screen beside words like a suspect and a fraud. For the first time in years, she breathed freely. The world finally saw him for what he was, a mask of kindness hiding rot. But Daniel wasn't done. He released fake documents suggesting Aisha's parents had been mentally unstable and that Aisha was seeking revenge for imagined abuse. The public grew divided. "They're trying to bury you in doubt," Miriam warned. Aisha felt the old fear return, the fear of not being believed. But she'd come too far to stop now. "If truth needs my pain to live," she said quietly, "then let it live through me." The police finally issued a warrant for Daniel's arrest after new forensic evidence surfaced. The brake lines of her parents' car had been cut, and the fingerprints matched his. Officers raided his home, but he was gone. "He'll run," Lonnie said. "He'll hide until it dies down." Aisha shook her head. "He won't run. He's too proud." And she was right. Daniel would rather burn everything than admit defeat. Daniel cornered Aisha at her mother's graveyard days later. "You think they'll believe you?" he sneered. Rain poured as they faced each other. "They already do," she said softly. He lunged, grabbing her wrist, but sirens wailed nearby. Police lights flooded the cemetery. "It's over, Daniel," she said, tears mixing with rain. He looked at her, broken, furious, but defeated. "You were supposed to be mine," he whispered as officers dragged him away. Aisha turned her face to the storm. She was free. The courtroom was packed for months. Aisha testified bravely, her voice steady despite tears. Evidence from the USB, documents, and recordings painted a clear picture of Daniel's guilt. His lawyers tried to twist her trauma into confusion, but Aisha's truth held firm. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts, she closed her eyes, feeling her parents' presence at last. Justice hadn't brought them back, but it had given her peace. After the trial, Aisha couldn't sleep. The quiet felt strange, almost foreign. For years, her life had been noise, fear, anger, survival. Now there was silence. She walked through the old house Daniel had once owned, reclaiming the things he'd hidden, her parents' photos, her mother's books, her father's notes. It no longer felt like a house of ghosts. It felt like a home waiting for healing. Miriam visited one evening, holding a newspaper. "You're an inspiration," she said. The front page read, "Aisha Ose Breaks Silence, the Power of Truth." The world now knew her story, but Aisha smiled humbly. "I didn't want fame," she said softly. "I just wanted peace." Miriam nodded. Sometimes peace begins when truth is spoken out loud. Aisha looked at the setting sun, wondering if her parents could see her. She hoped they were proud. Months later, Aisha received a letter from Daniel. It was short. "I'm sorry. I wanted to protect you from them, from the world. I became what I feared. Forgive me if you can." She stared at the paper for a long time, unsure if forgiveness was possible. Finally, she whispered, "I forgive you, but I never forget." She folded the letter and placed it beside her parents' photo, not as a memory of pain, but of survival. At Ridgeview University, Aisha began volunteering for a victims advocacy group. She shared her story quietly, helping others find their voices. Each time she spoke, the weight lifted a little more. Lonnie stood by her side, proud and protective. Together, they turned trauma into strength, grief into purpose. Aisha finally understood that healing wasn't forgetting, it was remembering without breaking. Years later, Aisha stood at her graduation ceremony, sunlight warming her face. She looked into the crowd and imagined her parents smiling. The applause sounded like closure. She'd rebuilt her life piece by piece, stronger than before. When the dean called her name, she walked across the stage with grace and pride. "For them," she whispered. For the first time, she felt free not just from Daniel, but from the past.